Chaos did not slowly unfold. It exploded. In the early hours of the weekend, the world woke up to a geopolitical shock that few believed was even possible. The United States did not issue a warning. It did not negotiate. It did not wait. It removed Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro by force and flew him out of his own country to face charges in New York. The man who ruled Venezuela for more than a decade is now sitting in a U.S. jail cell, and the country he left behind is unraveling. But the most furious reaction is not coming from Caracas. It is coming from Moscow. Because this wasn't just the fall of a dictator. This was the collapse of a critical pillar in Vladimir Putin's global strategy. Russia has just lost an ally, lost leverage, and potentially lost billions, maybe trillions, in future war funding. And that creates a problem Putin cannot easily solve. Let's start with what actually happened. In the pre-dawn hours of January 3rd, U.S. Special Forces launched a highly coordinated operation deep inside the Venezuelan capital. Under the cover of sudden airstrikes, strikes designed not to destroy, but to distract, American forces moved fast. Very fast. Explosions rocked Caracas. Communication networks went dark. Confusion spread across multiple cities. And while Venezuela's military scrambled, U.S. operators were already inside Maduro's fortified residence. Within minutes, Nicolás Maduro and his wife were in American custody. No prolonged firefight. No resistance that mattered. No rescue attempt. By the time Venezuela understood what was happening, it was already over. Hours later, Washington confirmed the unthinkable. Maduro had been extracted, transferred by sea, then airlifted to New York. Operation complete. The U.S. president wasted no time celebrating the mission, publicly calling it a success and framing it as a law enforcement action rather than a military invasion. But behind that messaging was a clear signal to the world. The United States is willing to physically remove leaders it considers a threat, even if those leaders are backed by another nuclear power. And that is exactly why Vladimir Putin is furious. Maduro was not just another friendly face for Moscow. He was an investment. For years, Russia quietly worked to expand its influence inside Venezuela, not with massive troop deployments, but with weapons, advisors, energy cooperation, and political backing. Whenever Washington tightened sanctions, Moscow stepped closer. Whenever Maduro felt threatened, Putin offered support. Air defense systems, military hardware, technical advisors, energy coordination. It was subtle, patient, and strategic. And it was all building towards something much bigger. Because Venezuela is not just politically important. Venezuela is an oil superpower waiting to be unlocked. The country holds the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, far more than Russia, far more than the United States, far more than Saudi Arabia. For Putin, gaining influence over Venezuela meant gaining leverage over global energy markets. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. And that leverage would have meant money. Enormous amounts of it. Money that could fuel Russia's economy. Money that could sustain sanctions pressure. Money that could feed the war machine in Ukraine. That future has now been ripped away. And the humiliation goes even deeper. When U.S. forces struck Caracas, Venezuela's Russian-supplied air defenses did almost nothing. No meaningful interception. No effective response. No deterrence. Systems that were supposed to protect a capital city failed to slow down a single extraction mission. That sends a devastating message, not just to Venezuela, but to every country considering Russian weapons or Russian protection. If Russian defenses cannot protect one of Putin's closest partners, who exactly are they supposed to protect? This is the second major ally Putin has lost in barely over a year. First Syria, now Venezuela. Two regimes Moscow worked hard to support, both gone. And unlike Syria, Venezuela sits in the Western Hemisphere, directly challenging America's historic influence. Putin didn't just lose territory. He lost credibility. The economic consequences are just as severe. Before Maduro's removal, trade between Russia and Venezuela was quietly growing. Energy cooperation was expanding. Russian fuel products were helping Venezuela move its oil, and Moscow was positioning itself for long-term access. That entire pipeline is now frozen, if not permanently severed. And worse still, the United States is already talking about bringing American oil companies into Venezuela. If that happens, global oil supply increases. And when supply goes up, prices go down. That is catastrophic for Russia, because Russia is already selling oil at a discount, already struggling under sanctions, already dependent on energy revenue to fund the war. Lower prices mean less cash. Less cash means less endurance. But here's where the story becomes more complicated. Because while this looks like a devastating blow to Putin, and in many ways it is, there is also an opportunity hidden inside the chaos. By carrying out a direct military extraction, the United States has handed Putin a powerful argument, one he has been waiting for. He can now claim that Washington has no moral authority to criticize military interventions. That if America can remove leaders in Latin America, then Russia has the right to shape outcomes in Eastern Europe. It doesn't make the argument true, but it makes it usable, and Putin only needs usable narratives. From this moment forward, every country worried about U.S. intervention will remember Venezuela. Every government that fears Washington's reach will hear Putin say one thing. Look what happened to Maduro. That fear creates openings, diplomatic openings, security partnerships, influence, and Putin knows how to exploit fear. So what happens next depends on what the United States does now. If Venezuela stabilizes, if institutions hold, if elections follow, if chaos is avoided, then this operation will be remembered as a strategic victory. But if Venezuela descends into disorder, violence, or economic collapse, the story changes. And Putin will be waiting, ready to point, ready to accuse, ready to rebuild influence elsewhere. One thing is certain. The capture of Nicolás Maduro has reshaped the global chessboard. Putin has lost an ally, lost oil leverage, lost future money. But the game is not over. And the next move, from Washington or Moscow, could define the next phase of global power.